I don't print out everything. I print out the things that
I make Faye print it out.
No. What now?
I make Faye print it out. I used to print it out on my printer at work sometimes. 200 pages. I'm like,
I think that's a good idea that you have it all printed out as mayor.
I do. I haul it everywhere. I show.
I always wanted to print something, and then she's like, all of that? And I'm like, forget it.
Yeah, it's awful big.
Going a long way around. I need steps.
Oh, no.
Yes.
I think these are off yet, Daniel.
Hello.
All right. Well, we got to wait for all of our board here. All right. Yeah.
It is on now.
I didn't time myself, so I'll try to talk fast.
That's what I was wondering.
Well,
Well, I think she's thinking of a lot of discussions.
you got it all down there. You got it all down there in your tab.
Yeah.
Where?
You know how that works, though.
Well, usually
Right?
a few times I've done it, I've just sketched
Comes
out
back
some
so
things I
it'll
didn't fill it completely out, and then I just
Look what Teeth made from it.
started talking.
Right? All right, Daniel, give us some juice. All right, we're back in regular session. Please stand or move cover and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item 5 is informational reports. Included in the packet is the annual MS4 report. City staff is available if there's questions on that in the future, but it's included in the packet, the entire report there. Also included is commission minutes and a subcommittee summary after our first meeting as the city manager subcommittee met. Item 6 is announcements and praise. I'd like to take a moment and pray here and give our Lord praise. Heavenly Father, we thank you for the ability to come before you. We pray that you fill our cup and we're more like you and less like ourselves. We thank you for being sovereign and for all that you do. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. I've got some notes here. Some of them are hard to read, which isn't good. Oh, branch and yard waste are going to go back into action at the recycle center tentatively for the 15th of April is kind of that schedule that we work on. But branches and lawn care is coming soon. So Tuesday the 25th, a week from tomorrow, there is a second forum that was planned after the first forum for an additional couple hours of questions and discussions for the upcoming election. Monday the 28th, which is a week from today, is when you have to have your registration changed in order to vote within your wards and within the city limits of Sturgis, and also when early voting starts here at City Hall, where you have the capability to come into City Hall and vote up till April 12th. Is that correct? Up till April 11th.
Yeah,
So,
April 11th.
Yep.
April 11th at 5 o'clock.
that's all I have for notes under announcements and praise. Anybody have anything to add?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
I do have one matter that the council had asked me to bring up, and that is the complaint, I should say, brought forward by Mr. Natchke at the last council meeting is under investigation, and there should be something for council action at its next meeting.
Thanks, Mr. Marshall.
I just wanted to say good luck to all the Sturgis wrestlers for the AAU program. They have state this weekend, and they've worked pretty hard this year.
Cool. Thanks, Jason. Anything else? Rick, you got something to add, it looks like.
I do. I'd just like to thank both Black Hills Power and Light and to our volunteer fire department and all the agencies that responded out to the ponds today. We averted what could have been a very large grass fire, so hats off to all of those agencies.
Thanks, Rick. Anything else for announcements and praise? Item 7 is Counselor's Update, and it's Angela's turn, so I'll turn it over to you, ma'am.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, I don't know about anybody else, but I'm wicked excited that spring is here as of yesterday. Hopefully everyone had a chance to get out and enjoy some fresh air and sunshine. I know the birds have been happy and loud. So with spring already here, our summer events are right around the corner. This year, Music on Main will have some added attractions, so everybody come out and see those. And I'd like to say that it's been a pleasure, an honor, and a blessing to sit on this council with such amazing leaders in our community. I'm not sure I'm at the same caliber as them as far as my knowledge or leadership skills, but I can say that my desire to help others and to better our community is just as strong. There's always pros and cons. While it's a great pleasure to sit here on this council, it's also a tremendous challenge. And I could probably talk all day about the complexities and challenges of serving on this council, but I don't like to talk that much, and no one wants to listen to me talk that much, I promise you. So I'll just touch on one area that is extremely difficult, and that is decision-making. And it's no secret that decision-making is hard. I mean, there are books out there, there are programs, there are courses, you name it, all on decision-making. And that's because it's a hard thing. And it becomes hard when you have to make a choice between things that are each good in and of themselves. It's not hard to make a decision between good and evil, but it becomes hard when there's more than one thing that is good. So, I mean, how do you make that decision? And that's something that I'm still trying to master. And actually, I happen to be reading a book right now, a guide to Christian decision making. We'll see if it helps any. But what makes an already difficult matter like decision making even more difficult is doing it from up here and doing it when you know, like it's a given that people are going to attack you after you make a decision. It seems to be the perception that we're up here making decisions, just snap decisions that aren't thought through, that aren't weighed out, or that we're favoring those who bring us the finest gold. And that couldn't be further from the truth. I've not seen any gold. I don't care who you are, but there's been a time in your life where you've had to make a tough decision. And, you know, maybe you're the type that just goes with the flow, says whatever happens will happen. But that's great, great for you, congratulations. It probably wasn't that important of a decision or that tough of one. But if it was an important decision, it probably caused you to lose sleep, to fret and stress over what's the right thing to do. So now take that decision and everything that went with it, so how important it was, the toughness of it, everything, and multiply that by 100 times. Or no, I'm sorry, multiply that by 7,000. And that's what we're facing being up here. The decisions we're making affect, according to the census, over 7,000 people, over 7,000 families in our community. And that's a huge weight. And you want to talk about stress? That's stress. We're up here making important and hard decisions, decisions that not a single one of us takes lightly. We're making decisions not just for ourselves and for our families. We're making those decisions for thousands of people and thousands of families. We're making those decisions for you and for your family. There's not a single person up here who would even consider making a decision without being properly informed. And I'd like to think that that's why the people that are up here, because you in the community know that about us, that we wouldn't just make a decision without having information. I'm not sure the exact number of committees that we have, but we have a number of committees that are geared to specific areas. We have legal and finance, we have infrastructure, we have rally and events, and we each sit on a couple of those committees, and we ask questions there. We get information. We ask for more information if it's needed. And we also ask all of you, our neighbors, our friends, our brothers, our sisters, even our enemies, or maybe that's a strong word. But we have asked you, and we continue to ask you to contact us, to tell us your thoughts. Ask us your questions if you're unsure. Maybe we're unsure, and we needed you to ask the question. Maybe you thought of something that we haven't thought of. You want and expect us to make good decisions for you and your families and for future generations. Even though we're inundated with information, we still want and need more. So we need your piece. There's so many variables that go into every decision item, so many things to factor in. I mean, the overall goal or purpose of something, how does it fit into the general vision? The opponents, proponents, what would they say? Who are they? What would it take for the first steps to implementation? The cost, where's the money coming from? Negative and positive impacts, who and what does it impact? People, the environment, how does it impact them? Long-term, short-term, what would our constituents expect from us? And those considerations only scratch the surface. And they're present with every single decision that we make. So, like I said, there are pros and cons to everything, and sometimes your voice could be the factor that makes or breaks something. I don't think there's one person up here that isn't approachable, not one person who would brush you off if you tried to start a dialogue with them. I mean, this guy sitting next to me is a little questionable, but can we make everybody happy? Absolutely not. But can we listen to your concerns? Can we factor those into the current issue at hand? Can we factor them into future decisions? Absolutely. Okay, I have been talking longer than I care to, but I'll kind of end this part with just letting you all know that we are asking questions, we are getting information before we make decisions, but that doesn't mean that we have all the information. And some of you might be holding information that we never even knew existed. Some of you might be holding ideas that we would have never considered. So if that's the case and you want us to make good and informed decisions, please share with us. And even if we do have all the information possible, it doesn't mean the decisions are easy. I can personally promise that every decision I come to is one that I feel is right and just based on the information I have, based on the variables, based on all the other factors to be considered. Do I always get it right? Nope. But do I try? I sure do. And do we as a council always get it right? Nope. But do we try? We sure do. Things have been working out great for our community and its growth. And even on the occasion when things don't work out quite as planned, we fail forward, as they say in the police academy. We learn from our mistakes personally, as a council, as a community. We grow, and that's what we want. We want to grow in every way. We want to grow personally, as a family, as a community. We want to grow in kindness and compassion. We want to grow as servants and as stewards. We want to grow in justice and in peace and in prosperity. And our desire to grow comes from our desire to live, and to live fully and freely. If something isn't growing, it's dying. So we all have pretty big decisions to make coming up here in the next few weeks. As was mentioned, the mayoral race and the races for ward council seats. So just as you would all expect us to ask questions and have all the information available before making a decision, please, please, please do the same. Know the source of your information. Know your information. Not all information is equal. Not all sources are equal. So pay attention to the motivation behind the information that you're getting and behind the source of that information. And make sure to get out and vote. And I would also, I don't think you mentioned it, Mark, I'd recommend that everyone get on the city's website and look at the voting ward locator map. We did redistricting just in January, I believe, and there are a lot of areas that changed wards. So if you haven't already checked that out, make sure you do. You could have been living in one ward for 20 plus years and now you're in another ward, and then you don't want to find that out when you get to the polls to vote, and then not even know the people who you have in front of you to vote for. So check that out soon so that you can start gathering information and asking questions about the candidates that you will be voting for. And I believe that's all I have.
Thanks, Angela. Mr. Ainsley, City Manager report on item 8. So I'll turn it over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple of fairly quick comments here. One, we did start a new service called the Conference Call Bridge. That is for all of the public meetings that are held in this room, and so that's for our Municipal Utilities Board, as well as our Parks Board and Planning and Zoning Commission, our Library Board, and of course the City Council. So in the past, you would have to log on to Facebook so you could actually watch this stream, and it's also posted afterwards on YouTube. In addition, you can call a toll-free number, and with this access code, you're able to listen in at the same time. And this information will be listed on all agendas. Next, under payroll, we do have a new individual at the community center, a new front desk attendant, and also a new member of our ambulance crew. Whitney is going to be a community healthcare worker. That's a part of a grant that we received from the state. That's a new service that we are providing to the community. We are launching that in April, I believe. I don't remember the exact date, but it's a brand new service that will hopefully enhance the quality of life of Sturgis as well as this area. And it's a pilot program that we are running for the state, and it should definitely be of assistance for a lot of our area's residents. Next, one of the claims is for our Economic Development Loan Fund. Just a reminder for the public that the funds for this Economic Development Loan Fund are not local property taxes or local sales tax. They actually originated more than 25 years ago from a grant that the city received from the federal government. It is for economic activity with an emphasis on small businesses. In 2015, the council adopted a small business loan program that listed about 10 different targeted retail categories. If a business fit into one of those targeted categories, there was a 2% amortization of that loan over 10 years. So the point of that was to give people the working capital that they're able to purchase the equipment or the inventory needed, so they're able to quickly begin their operations, to have it fully be repaid in 10 years. So it's a little more advantageous than what you can get in traditional bank financing. Then if someone was in a business that was not one of those targeted retail clusters, it would still they would still be able to apply for it. It would be at a 3% interest though versus a 2%, which is still a very good interest rate. When an individual is interested in that, they make an application through SEDC. SEDC reviews the application and also the finances of the individual, and then makes a recommendation to the city. And if it's a favorable recommendation, then it's listed on the claims. Currently, we have 12 active loans. Several have already been fully repaid. So on tonight's claims, there is a $100,000 loan, and that is for a new business that is looking to open, I think, in the next 30 to 45 days. And that would be for a sports equipment retailer in our downtown. And so that would be at a 2% interest rate over the 10-year period. And again, that's the same that has occurred for several businesses over the past 7 years now. Next is sales tax, and our general 2% sales tax for the month of January was 8.2% higher than January of 21. You can see on that chart that we are doing fantastic, though January, and all honesty, is one of our lowest sales tax months, so you can't really necessarily predict a trend based on January alone. In the general sales tax, you really have to look through at least the first quarter before you can really see if there's a good positive trend. And then tourism makes up such a large portion too, that really in order to see what the tourism impact is, you really have to wait until the end of August to see that. But nevertheless, it's good to see that we are off to a strong start. In the Triple B fund, we did fall compared to last January. It still was good, but we were about 5% lower. And again, January, especially the tourism sales tax in January, is quite small anyway. So a minor percentage loss in January can easily be made up later in the summer. Then lastly, an update on the 7th Street crossing. I believe we discussed that in more detail 2 council meetings ago. I think I'm not going to go over the exact timeline of everything that went in. That's the same timeline that we discussed 2 council meetings ago, but the city has been working as quickly as possible to restore that 7th Street crossing. Right now, we are at the stage that a design for a crossing has been approved by FEMA to be constructed, and the estimated construction cost 1 year ago when that was completed was at $900,000. Now we are asking the other half of FEMA if they would potentially reimburse us for that. That reimbursement could be up to 75%. So this is a large dollar figure, about $700,000 that we're talking about. At the time when Dave went over this with the council, there was a question about would we be able to start construction on that, and then if we find out from FEMA later on that it would be reimbursable, would we be able to be reimbursed for that? We did ask that from FEMA, and FEMA responded that no. If you are proceeding with construction costs now, that's not really eligible for reimbursement. So in order to be eligible for reimbursement, you have to allow FEMA to finish their process. We provided everything to FEMA late January or early February. By law, they have 18 months to respond. And in that 18 months, if they respond with additional questions, then the 18 months starts again. So we are hoping that we will hear soon, but ultimately there's nothing we can do to require them to do that faster. And with that, just one other note that we are listing in the minutes several volunteers for the Sturgis Police Department. They are volunteers, so they're not being paid, but they're being listed so that they're included in our liability and workers' compensation insurance plan. And those individuals are listed on the agenda and will be included in the minutes. Are there any questions? Thank you.
Thanks, Daniel. Item 9 is consent calendar. We have 9.1 through 9.7 tonight. Includes our minutes from our previous meeting, setting multiple public hearings, setting the election board and the counting board, and also granting abatements to 2 properties that worked with the county on proving owner occupied. Does council wish to remove any of those items, 9.1 through 9.7, and discuss them individually? How about anybody in the public? Any consent calendar items that need to be removed and discussed individually? Is there a motion?
I move to approve the consent agenda, please.
Got a first by Becca.
Second.
Got a second by Jason. We do have minutes, so we'll go ahead and roll call. Jason, we'll start with you.
Yes.
Aaron?
Yes.
Dean?
Yes.
Becca?
Yes.
I'm yes. Kevin?
Yes.
Angela?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
And Mike?
Yes.
Consent calendar passes. Item 10 is Item 10 is approval of claims. Claims are included in the council packet. Questions from council on any of those claims or discussion? Public questions, comments, concerns? Is there a motion?
So moved.
Got a first by Becca. Second by Dave. Any last discussion from council? All those in favor of the motion, please indicate by stating yes.
Yes.
Opposed and no. Please note unanimous favor for the roll call. Item 11 is public hearings. 11.1 is consideration to approve a special events license for the SEDC annual meeting. Everything was included in the packet, needed insurance. It's going to be located, the event's going to occur at the Armory. I guess any further questions, comments, concerns from council on this particular special event license? Public input on this granting this special event license.
Move to approve.
Got a first by Jason.
Second.
I have a second by Dean. Any last discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please indicate by stating yes.
Yes.
Opposed to no. That motion carries. 11.2 is also a special event license. This is for the Charities Gala for April 23rd. I believe that's in the auditorium too, or maybe I was wrong on the first one. But again, all things included that are needed in the packet for the request for a special event. Council have any comments, questions, concerns on this action? Public input on this public hearing of granting of a special event license.
I just have one question.
Go ahead.
On purchasing tickets for this. Where at or?
They got them back there.
Amanda and Rochelle.
Who do we have to get? Rochelle Brook would
Yeah.
be who you want to get a hold of.
Yeah.
Amanda England.
Or Amanda, yeah.
England.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Thanks, Jason. Any other discussion? Was there a motion? There wasn't a motion.
So moved.
Was there a motion?
No.
No. We got a first by Becca.
Second.
We got a second by Aaron, third by Mike. All those in favor of the motion, please indicate by stating yes.
Yes.
Opposed to no. A motion carries. Item 11.3 was changed at the approval of the agenda stage, was removed at the owner's of the request. That transfer will not occur, and that'll just go back into the city inventory, I think is the way Faye told me to when she was telling me about that. So no action needed on 11.3 because of previous action. Item 12 is reports. 12.1 is resolution 2022-19. Mr. Bush has our staff report, and I'll turn it over to you, Rick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Up for your consideration tonight is kind of some routine business. Every 2 years, we're required to do a bridge inspection, the National Bridge Inspection Program. This includes 6 bridges that are located within our community. These bridges are located on roads or thoroughfares that are either federal or state highways or roads that we have included in our state infrastructure plan, making these roads and bridges eligible for state and federal highway authority funds. So it doesn't include every single crossing, but the ones that we have identified. We actually have 6. Of the 6, they would be the Whitewood Service Road Bridge, the 9th Street Bridge, Junction Avenue Bridge, Fulton and Marshall Street, which are 2 crossings that actually go over the Dead Man Channel, and then the Sly Street Bridge that goes into the park. It's not a bridge, it's a box culvert. And then the Vanacker Canyon box culverts out by the Richards property. So those are, the 7 bridges that are included in our eligible bridges. What we need to do tonight is approve or authorize a resolution that we want to participate in the state DOT process. We can do it a couple of different ways. We can go out and hire an engineer and do our own inspections, thereby using 100% of city funds, or we can follow the prescribed South Dakota DOT procedures, qualify for 80% reimbursement, or we can go out. That's what we do. We've got those 2 choices. So what we're asking the city council to do is authorize a resolution that allows us to fall underneath the South Dakota DOT program, whereas we're reimbursed 80% of those funds. We have 25 pre-selected consultants then that we can choose from to do our bridge inspections. We would request that the council authorize Bros Engineering to be our consultant. We've used them probably the last 10 years and have had really good luck. I would also like to report that out of our 7 bridges, our lowest bridge or structure, they're rated from 0 to 100, with 0 being the worst case, 100 being the best. We have Whitewood Service Road Bridge at 97%, 9th Street at 100, Junction at 100, Fulton at 94.5, Marshall at 93.6, Sly Street at 100, and Vanacker Canyon at 89. So all of our bridges are definitely in exceptional shape, and we at this point in time would not qualify for any kind of big grants or any kind of revitalization grants for those bridges because they really don't need it. Most of what we're seeing that would score us a little bit lower than the 100% are some cosmetic and some signage issues. So with that, I won't go into further unless you guys have any questions on the program itself.
I got one quick clarification. So you stated 7 structures, I think, was when I was counting them, and then in the report there was 8. Is there another one that it doesn't break it down? It just had the numeral 8.
There's just 7. It must have been a typo. Sorry about that, Mayor.
But,
and I've got the 2020 report if anybody wants to see it.
Right.
And every year, some of you who were sitting on the council last year, Bros, when they do get done with it, they'll come in and give a detailed inspection report on those 7 structures.
Any other questions for Rick from council?
I just wanted to clarify that it's the option to utilize one of the 22 consulting firms.
Yes.
Okay. And that would be where the city pays 20%.
Correct, and the
All
DOT pays 80%, correct.
Okay, thank you.
Well, I'd make a motion then for option 3 to utilize one of the 22 consulting firms.
So we got a first by Aaron. Second. We have a second by Becca. Yeah.
Yes.
How about public input or questions? Come on up, Bonnie. We need you on the microphone. We're getting so high tech that we gotta let everybody hear you. Get stoved up from sitting too long.
I just was of the recommended consultants, are they all the same price?
Yes.
Yeah.
So then we know what it's going to cost us? Yes. So what's our piece of our 20%?
I haven't got that this year.
10%. Oh, okay. All right.
They're all under the same program.
Okay, so they're all the same price and
Based on structure, yes.
okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Bonnie.
Just for clarification, Mayor, that resolution is 2022-19.
So we got a first and a second on the floor to approve resolution 2022-19 along with using the DOT's program for the bridge inspection. Is that a fair statement, Aaron and Becca?
Yes.
Yep. Yeah.
Well, and I mean, can we just add for clarification for the public that in the report it says that the line item for this contains $5,000, which staff feels will be sufficient. Okay.
Yep. Thanks, Becca. Any last discussion, public or council? Got a first and a second on the floor. All those in favor of the motion, please indicate by stating yes.
Yes.
Opposed to no. That motion carries.
Thank you, Mayor.
Item 12.2 is a 3-mile policy agreement with Meade County. Dave has got our staff report on this. I tried to entice the county to stay after the equalization, but they thought you could handle it, Dave. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. Up for the consideration tonight on this in front of you is, again, the 3-mile policy agreement that we have with Meade County. Just a little background information. The state does authorize municipalities and counties to enter into cooperative agreements to promote orderly growth and development in areas surrounding the municipalities. These agreements may determine which standards and which entities review construction and development in these areas immediately surrounding the municipalities. Given this authority by the state, the City of Sturgis and Meade County operate under a 3-mile policy agreement for approving plat applications. The agreement defines zones that determine which entity accepts and reviews those plat applications, with the understanding that the other party will receive an opportunity for review also, and they make comment. The agreement also determines those policies will be implemented based on where the property is located. Every 5 years, the agreement and accompanying map, which is the exhibit, is reviewed, updated as necessary or needed. The current agreement that we had has expired. Officials from Meade County and the City of Sturgis have prepared a revised agreement to be considered by City Council tonight. Just kind of little discussion points too. The agreement that was presented to the City Council by me on December 20th, 2021 has been revised to closely reflect the previous agreement enacted in 2014. The agreement will operate with 2 zones rather than 3, and the city will not issue permits for new construction within Area 1. Area 3 surrounding the airport has been omitted from the version. However, regardless of local government policies, federal regulations related to the development there within the range of the airport will not be superseded. That's the airport clear space. FAA has regulations governing height of structures, distance, location to our airport and our clear zones. The only major updates to the previously adopted agreement are the inclusion of stormwater management and the map, which will need to be revised to reflect the current city boundaries and the updated land area defining areas 1 and 2. If signed, the agreement will be valid for 5 years. However, when the City of Sturgis's comprehensive plan is finalized in the upcoming months, this policy agreement will be reviewed and revised to reflect the purpose and intent of the comprehensive plan. At that time, the policy arrangement that was proposed in December 2021 will be recommended for adoption. The Meade County Commission approved the attached document at their March 8th, 2022 meeting, and as it's currently presented in your packets. The staff recommendation is the motion to approve the revised 3-mile agreement with Meade County. Are there any questions?
Any questions from council for Dave? How about public input on this matter?
Have those boundaries available on GIS?
The question was asked if the boundaries are available on GIS, and I assume the answer is yes.
Yeah, they will be available once the agreement is signed, and we will place those boundaries. But there's a map right here. There's Area 1 and Area 2.
And that was in the packet, right?
That's in the packet. Yeah. And I'll hand my copy to Mr. Bertolato on my way past him.
There you go. Any other discussion? Council or public? Is there a motion?
I'll motion to approve the 3-mile agreement.
We got a first by Kevin.
I'll second.
We have a second by Aaron. Any last discussion?
Well, I'll say that I will vote in favor of this only because we have written into it that at the time in the next or later this year when the comprehensive plan, we're discussing that we will discuss any possible reviews or updates to this.
Any other discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please indicate by stating yes.
Yes.
Opposed, a no. That motion carries. Thanks, Dave.
Thank you.
Item 12.3 is Title II discussion, contractors licensing and construction regulations. This is an additional step that council's implemented in the past with discussion of ordinance changes or opening up titles and making them more real to what we actually operate within Sturgis, and some of them are quite antiquated, to be quite truthful. But as we do this, we have this first step in the process where discussion is brought forward. City Hall works on it and brings the recommendations forward from discussions and meetings. So, Mr. Miller, I'll turn it over to you, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The proposed revisions for Title II essentially acts as a comprehensive overhaul of Title II. Many of the revisions are generally to revise and update and remove obsolete old language, plus removing any redundant language and trying to clarify the existing language within the title. Within the proposed revisions, there are numerous substantive proposed revisions. These are primarily geared towards kind of either narrowing or clarifying many of the aspects, such as building permits, different licensing, and various components of Title II. One of the first substantive proposed revisions is to essentially consolidate the stop work orders, which is generally a primary tool used to, if anyone is in violation of any of Title II, a stop work order essentially seizes and restrains the construction on any of the buildings until they comply with either the inspections or building permits or various aspects of Title II. The purpose of these revisions is to put it in the general area rather than having it at various parts throughout the title. This way it applies through the whole title and there's really no question on applicability. And it clarifies some of the language on the building inspector and who may issue the stop work orders, who or how this stop work order would function, such as it's to provide to the person in writing. That way they're fully aware for compliance with the stop work order. The second primary or substantive revision is to expand the exceptions to the building permits this is one area where there's a lot of flexibility where it's, I added a few additional exceptions to building permits that weren't previously accepted. Some of these are the kind of adding in additional kind of swings and other playground equipment, paper, tiling, countertops, and other similar finishing work, window awnings that project less than 54 inches with no additional support, and retaining walls 4 feet or less with no supporting surcharges. Essentially, the exceptions are trying to limit on the permit requirements for generally things that don't affect the structural integrity of the building or affect zoning or any sort of compliance issues. So it's up to generally the council's discretion on how strict we want to be on building permits versus providing additional exceptions. I know we've had some significant discussions with the building and planning permitting department and the building inspector on kind of what they would prefer, along with just seeing on whether permits are necessary. And I think ultimately requesting from the council to provide some input on the scope of these exceptions for the first reading. And then I can go back to planning and permitting and to various stakeholders and discuss either the additional exceptions or removing these exceptions and clarifying the language for the exceptions to the building permits.
Eric, can I interrupt you there? Do you feel that your blue writing additions, are those inclusive of all their concerns, or do you think there could be more?
I think a further discussion with the planning and permitting, it just depends. There's various weights. For one is whether we should permit or require permits for specific things such as a lot of the finishing work and countertops, and tiling could go either way, where, I think tiling is a significant remodel that may affect like the weight of the floor, things of that sort, where it potentially may affect the structural integrity. But also this, by expanding the permit requirement, allows the city to essentially ensure that kind of keep tabs on what is being constructed within the city. For instance, if somebody wants to remodel an entire kitchen, there may be some aspects that potentially could fit underneath these exceptions that may affect the structural integrity. And then if you decrease the permit requirements, then that can decrease some costs on a lot of the citizens, but then also removes that regulatory stance of the city. And there may be some things that could potentially cause some issues with projects that are completed.
You're making somebody cry, Eric.
He's saying we're gonna make it better. It's not gonna be 300. It's 500 now.
And I know Dave can probably speak a lot with more expertise in this area than I can, and that's why I think the planning department is such a good asset. But also, one aspect of requiring permits is ensures the city to be able to keep tabs on the contractors that are acting and working within the city to ensure, one, they're permitted under the contractor licensing requirements, but also to keep tabs that make sure some kind of fly-by-night contractors and coming into town, causing a ruckus and then taking off before things catch up to them. So it's a balance of kind of what is prioritized, and there's costs to both, and there's benefits to a narrower or expanded scope.
One quick. So are we going from Are we at $500 right now? And then you're wanting to lower it to $300? Then you have to get a permit when it's over 300, or where are you at on that?
That is one of the recommendations.
Recommendation would be to go from $500 down to $300. So if you have a $300 something, you have to get a permit.
Yeah, and in order to balance that, we put no fee from the $300 to $500 schedule.
Right.
That way the city can still keep tabs on various projects that are going on.
I just wanted to make sure that was understood, that everybody got that. Thank you.
And some of the additional revisions are to kind of addressing moving permits and requiring that generally, I mean, there's building code statutorily does not apply to mobile or manufactured homes. So one means of ensuring the safety of those is through the moving permits, and the HUD requires that any manufactured home mobile home after 1976 receive certification that they're built to HUD standards, and that essentially acts in lieu of the building code. And the moving permit allows the building inspector to ensure that those mobile or manufactured homes coming into the city or being moved within the city comply with that HUD requirement, but also allows the building inspector to see if there's a mobile home coming in or moving within the city that potentially could pose a significant fire hazard or is in such poor shape that there's a lot of different potential issues for safety of the community, that it can address that through that moving permit. Another substantive revision is to add a new section for landscaping contractors. This primarily is geared towards kind of tree removers, tree trimmers, generally large landscaping projects, things of that sort that potentially there's not a specific permit set up for those under our current Title II. This would expand that to ensure that those contractors are also licensed within the city. However, within that, there's an exception to like lawn mowing companies that they're not required to receive the contractor permit. Then the other significant substantive revision is to add a section on outdoor light fixtures. This is regulating large light fixtures, and I believe this is in response to a potential complaints over the years of large light fixtures causing issues with neighboring landowners. So this would provide the city a means of regulating those. Happy to answer any questions.
Further discussion on Title II from council. It's like Eric mentioned, like we talked about before, it's a situation where we're trying to remove any redundancies and clean up areas and bring clarity to discussion points that we run into, specifically in the planning and permitting.
Just touching on what Jason had mentioned with the dollar amount where the permit comes into play. I mean, with the cost of materials skyrocketing, I mean, I wouldn't think that we even need to adjust that. I mean, because I know I replaced some boards on my deck, so now replacing just a couple boards on my deck, I have to go get a permit. Even though the permit is free, it's still an inconvenience. I mean, just to replace boards, just with the costs. If anything, I would think that could even go up some. So, I mean, I don't think I'd like to see it go down at all.
I agree with your statement that, that shouldn't definitely not go down. Question on landscape contracting from the point of view of a volunteer organization. is an organization, say baseball, say the trail organization, going to be required to have a contractor's license now?
Sorry, I'll address a couple things. First off, like the boards that you were talking about, that does fall under the section in the ordinance where there's general routine maintenance. So if you do routine maintenance in your home and you walk in the spring, there's a couple boards that need to be replaced. There's no inspections, no permit required for that.
Now they cost $100 each.
Yes, I know, yeah. And is volunteer organizations, Kevin, no. What we're looking at is we ran into, and the reason that this is in there, we ran into a lot of drainage issues in development because of certain landscape contractors coming in and not providing a plan to us to look at to ensure that drainage is going to work. We really don't want to have that happen again because you've lived through it and we're still dealing with it on some situations that we got to try and fix now after the fact. That's part of the reason that Eric and I discussed that section. But when it comes down to baseball organizations doing something, no, we're not looking at that. We're just we want the major landscape contractors to be able to give us a plan on what they're doing. And it doesn't matter to me if the council doesn't want to require a permit for that landscaping. I just want to make sure that we require that the landscape contractor tell us what they're going to do and show us before they create a problem for the neighbors. I'm sorry, I kind of rambled there.
An example of which would be mud in the street.
Yes, and we're addressing that with a lot of the contractors with best management practices now required, is something we required under the MS4. So they have to put wattles in and stuff to keep that any runoff, hold back as much of that as possible.
I had one on temporary structures here. It just says built out of wood, minimum of a 2x4, which you have 2-inch by 4-inch. Just as a contractor, you're 1.5 by 3.5. I mean, I don't know. I'm just trying to make sure that if we're working on this, that we're clearing it up, or if the vision was that you're not wanting anything less than like a actual 2x4, I guess is what.
I guess we didn't have any real vision on that at that,
okay,
but
no,
we'd
right.
sure gladly look at the input. I mean, whatever Jason, you've got more in that than I do.
203.15, and that'd be A is where.
So what would be your suggestion?
I mean, I guess to clean it says no less than 2x4, which in technical terms, dimensional, I guess, dimensional.
Dimensional lumber.
Yeah, dimensional 2x4, I guess would be the thing on it. Yes.
We can make that adjustment.
How about public input on Title II? I thought that's why you guys are all here.
Bonnie, you have to come up.
Our technology. So
I could get a mic for you if you want. Would that be easier?
Theoretically.
It's not a big deal. I'm just having trouble figuring out what's the final. Is there a final unmarked?
So what's included in the packet, Bonnie, is red line stuff, and then the blue line is additional. The blue font is additional.
And is there beyond this a document that has the changes out? Just this is going to be the final.
No, this is still discussion phase. That will, what you're talking about is when it comes back to first reading, and not per se that's going to be final, but that's going to be at least a final document created by staff through council discussions, public and private. That will bring it there.
I had trouble opening these this week, so I was looking at the unmarked copy, which I thought was the after the red and blue. So I'm going to sit down and shut up until next time.
Any other discussion? No action needed on this step of the process of opening up ordinances and titles. Eric, do you have what you needed on that direction? How about the initial part that was discussed about what can be excluded from requiring a building permit? Do you feel comfortable with that input? I mean, the council basically, I think, is accepting what was provided for.
No, I think changing it.
Yeah. But I was talking the categories, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if the council feels comfortable with expanding the exceptions, I can work closely with building, planning and the planning and permitting department, sorry. And both Dave and Karina on narrowing those exceptions and kind of rewording some of them, because there's some that are termed fairly open-ended, and trying to narrow the exceptions down to, and while expanding them, just clarifying.
With clarity, yep.
On stop work orders, I guess, say a roofer doesn't have their proper permits, and then there's other work that's going on, the whole entire job gets shut down, or is it just the roofers that get shut down?
Generally, anyone either not in compliance, that's the narrowed scope. And that's ultimately up to either the building inspector, planning and permitting, or the engineers, depending on. And there's also flexibility where if a project needs to be done, the planning and permitting and building, along with the building inspectors and engineers, can review that and allow them to complete it, and then go back in.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Public or council? Thanks, Eric.
Thank you.
Item 12.4 is consideration to approve purchase agreement of the Richards property. Mr. Marshall's got our staff report here, and I'll turn it over to you, Mark.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. The Richards property was one of the very first items to which I was assigned back in September of 2021. During the third week of September, the first negotiations that I was a part of took place at Mr. Bertolotto's office, involving the mayor, myself, Mr. Richards, and Mr. Bertolotto. At that time, the discussion and negotiation centered around a contract for deed, which would allow the flexibility to capture the property and preserve a lot of options, and to allow the city to do its due diligence on this matter. The city looked into the state of the gypsum on the property and had a geotechnical investigation done. Another component of that initial due diligence involved whether the property would cash flow independent of the building of an aquatic park. The initial price discussions at that time were $2.2 million. The concerns about the geotechnical status of the land and about the ability to cash flow, at least from the standpoint not involving an aquatic park, were satisfied, and the project and discussion of the purchase delayed because of the impact of COVID on the aquatic park consultants. After all of that came together and the aquatic committee offered its recommendations, the negotiations in earnest on the purchase of this property took place. The result of those negotiations is the purchase agreement that's included in the council packet. Some of the most important parts of that purchase agreement are the purchase price of $1.4 million, which represents a very significant concession by Mr. Richards and is reflective of his desire that the city, rather than someone else, acquire this property. I believe Mr. Richards is earnest in his statement that nobody else has a prayer to buy this property anywhere near the $1.4 million. Some of the other important provisions of the purchase agreement include safety clauses, I would call, so that if the purchase of the property is not approved tonight, that agreement is null and void. Another one is if the purchase of this property is referred to a vote by referendum, and the referendum is successful, then this agreement is null and void. The agreement has dates that require action. It reflects that this agreement was to be and is being considered tonight. And if approved tonight, then the time within which a referendum petition must be filed drives the closing date. If a referendum is filed and is unsuccessful, that closing date can be renegotiated. It also includes a cooperation clause so that Mr. Richards is contractually obligated to cooperate with the city in whatever development the city wants to see take place on this property. In an effort to drive the parties to an agreement on price, the agreement reflects that the city will deed back to Mr. Richards 7 lots. There's been discussion on the size of those lots. At one time, it was suggested that they comprise 104,000 square feet or 2.38 acres. That has been reduced to a more simpler means of expression by saying 7 lots, and those 7 lots have been identified preliminarily on the attachment to the agreement. That determination is only a preliminary determination because, of course, the land has not been, there's no plats, there's no lots, there's no layout there. So it contemplates further action, but was placed in the agreement so that the matter can be considered. There is, I think, an element of tension about what the intended use of this property is, and that tension results from differing viewpoints about whether this is being acquired for the purpose of the Lakeside Aquatic Park, or if this is being acquired with that in mind, but could be diverted to a different use if the other use becomes more appropriate. That is what lawyers like to take as the easy way out and say is a political consideration. The option is open for you in your discretion and based on the input from your constituents to determine what you believe is the best use for this property if you make the decision to purchase it. I appreciate that tension, and that tension is outside of what I am qualified to comment on. So having said that, I would be happy to entertain any questions council may have on the purchase agreement as proposed. Council or staff recommends that council authorize this purchase.
Any council questions from Mr. Marshall on the contract itself? I think Mr. Marshall expressed it quite well, but I'd like to reiterate it, but included in the council packet is some numbers and comparisons and some conservative business plans that would drive if there was an aquatics park built, to help bring that information forward, show what the costs were, show that the intent of what the city would do out there is not to do something that would cost a whole bunch more to our general fund and all the way down to the taxpayers of the city of Sturgis. Mr. Ainsley is our business manager of the city for sure, and this is certainly his bailiwick on this, and he prepared this. It's partly from the input of the consultants that we hired a while back, and it's also done through the discussions that we've had on what the vision of the council is. So, Mr. Ainsley, I'll have you summarize those pages of business plans, if you would, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. As the mayor commented, this is based off of a couple different inputs. One, of course, is from the consultants that were hired that have designed and operated several of these over the past several years. And then it was also reviewed by our Infrastructure Advisory Committee, as well as several staff that looked at the product that was provided by the consultants and also made some additional modifications to be a little more consistent with the Sturgis area. And so within the packet, it does display the number of hours for the various positions that would be hired at this location, what the anticipated hourly rate would be, as well as their benefit or FICA costs. So the total labor costs that we would anticipate would be roughly 150, almost 155,000. Insurance, security, outsourcing. What that is the setup and the teardown of the actual obstacle course or adventure parks part of that. That was a number that was provided by the consultants. Supplies, repairs, data utilities. All of these numbers have largely been driven by the consultant, but also checked with what the current local environment is. So for the utilities, other things like that. But it comes out to a total operating expense of right around $290,000. To look at that, not to say that that's not a large number. I think the council is very cognizant of that and wants to make sure that that total operating cost is not a continual burden onto the community. But I think it's also important to weigh that compared to some of the other existing operating costs that we have as a community to try to enhance our culture and recreation here in the community. For example, our library department in this year will have approximately $393,000. Our parks department will have almost $731,000. The community center, this is the net expense of the community center after looking at the revenue that is brought in at the community center. And it does not include capital improvements at the community center, which we just completed a roughly $500,000, I think, improvement of the locker rooms, pool, and other areas. So the community center, forgetting about the capital, still has a net investment required annually of almost $500,000. So the council, I think, is trying to ensure that there's not going to be an additional $290,000 placed on top of that. But I think also to look at that and say $290,000 is not a staggering number. That's not something that the city's not used to on an annual basis. Looking at the operating revenue models, the council has had some discussion at this in the various committees. What essentially they've looked at is a couple different models. One is that, number one, a gate admission. The gate admission would include unlimited use of swimming at the aquatic park, water slides, the sand beach, and also the splash pad. And then a season pass would include the daily gate fee, as well as 1 hour each day at the aqua park, and 30 minutes every day of watercraft, and daily 1 round at the miniature golf. Again, these are preliminary. I know there's been some discussion that maybe the watercraft, it should be 1 hour versus 30 minutes. I mean, there's there's definitely adjustments I think that could be made as the council has further discussion with residents and other individuals. But looking at what the consultants put together, which was looking at the number of residents that live within about a 45-minute drive area of Sturgis, as well as the number of tourists that come here, and comparing that with other areas that have these similar facilities. They believed a conservative model would average about 290 people a day, plus season pass holders. And so looking at that, you would see that the gate pass, the price is actually zero in this model. So in other words, the conservative model, there is no charge to enter the facility and to use it as a park. So anyone that would want to would be able to come in and use the beach. They would be able to swim, and they would be able to use a splash pad. That would all be free for individuals using this model. With that being said, the add-ons of the aqua park and also the watercraft, as well as the miniature golf, cabanas, and food and beverage and merchandise, that conservative model comes up with a revenue of about $375,000. Another option, which was a gate model where you would actually charge for individuals to come into the park, that was anticipated to be a charge of about $5 a day. In doing so, they believe that it would probably be about a 30% reduction in the number of people that go into the park on a daily basis. So with that, you start collecting more money at the gate, but then you collect less money at all the add-ons because there's fewer people coming in. So looking at that, it actually results in an overall reduced total revenue of about $306,000. And then their third model is looking at a more aggressive model, saying that the conservative is looking at it too low, so about a 20% increase in the number of attendees that would be there on a daily basis. So that means on an average daily basis, about 350 people would be there. Then the resulting revenue of that would be just under $500,000. So when you start looking at this, there are different levels, of course, for revenue. This is looking at the best estimates that have been prepared by the consultants who run these sorts of facilities, and looking at our population and our demographics and our tourism. And that's how they came up with these proposals overall for the community. But I think the important thing to look at that is the revenue does start coming close to and actually exceeding what those average operating costs would be on a year. And if there was some year that there's going to be a shortfall because it was a really rainy year and a lot of people didn't go to the lake, of course, at that point you do start cutting some hours of some of the staff so that you don't have as many costs, but there still would be some costs. And those sorts of events, you could see that there would be a possible use of city resources of a couple tens of thousands of dollars, which would be an impact. But again, compared to the Parks Department, the library, the community center, it becomes fairly minimal. The other things that I think are important to look at is when you look at the total cost of the construction of the proposed aquatic park, it's not looking at a lot of uses of city funds as far as taxpayer funding from property taxes or sales tax. That was what the city used when we constructed the community center 30 years ago. At that point, it was a roughly $6 million project. There were bonds that were issued in order to be able to afford that. So when you looked at that, it was the annual operating costs as well as the cost of repaying those loans. That was a significant expense or investment for the community. Not that the community center isn't important. I know I often tell Rod that, that and the library really are the hearts of the community, which they are. I mean, we actually average about 7,000 people a week going into the community center. It's significant, but that was a significant investment. This is fundamentally different in that the development pays for the vast majority of the cost of constructing this park. And so it's not a new ongoing annual loan payment that the city has to budget for out of its capital improvement fund or out of its general fund. And so I know I've spoken with residents who have a concern saying, when this last happened at the community center, it required a huge investment of taxpayer resources. And so can the city really afford to do this? This really is kind of a different model than what was done for the community center. But with that, that's a quick review. I know Councilor Jordan has also reviewed this, and I have some slides that I think he would like to go over.
Yeah, first I wouldn't mind just addressing a little bit of that tension that Mark talked about. If you were here at the beginning of the meeting, Mr. Richards, looks like he has.
Yes, sir. We're still considering the item. This is part of the packet here, so can you get him a microphone there, Faye? Is that all right? Yeah.
Yep, we'll hand it to you.
Since I'm the one that's trying to convince you on this, what Dan didn't mention, and one of the reasons I was enthused about this, was that I looked at that hill over there, and it's no towns around here have got a hill like that. It's unique, and you can use skateboards up it, and you're on a section line, so all you need is a 4x4 or side-by-side with tracks on it. And so you extend this thing from the summer into a year-round project, because you can haul kids up there and they can skate back down, and you can also take bicyclers up there and cross-country people and go up on top, and then you're in BLM land, which it borders. And so instead of just being in the summer, you can have this, and it don't cost anything to start out. And if you really want to get fancy, well, you can do so, but just get you a used John Deere side-by-side and pull the kids up in a cart or a wagon where they're protected and let them out at different places. And on the skis, they can go up there and skate forever. And I don't think you got a good place around the hills as good as that is. That was one of the reasons I was enthused about this and dropped our price down. I think the kids in town would enjoy this, and people coming on the highway are going to see those kids playing down there, and they're going to want to come down and join them. So I think you'll gain sales tax enough to be worthwhile. Thank you.
Thanks, David. Mr. Jordan.
Yeah, I was just going to talk about some of the tension that Mark talked about. How you look at the purchase of the property, the Richards property. Is it a standalone action, or is it have a connection to the adventure park? And I think if you were to talk to the Ninas up here, you may not get a consistent answer on that, because honestly, we just haven't really fully developed that even with amongst ourselves. But speaking for myself, I look at them as the two are joined together. And the reason I look at it that way is because that's how we have communicated to the people of Sturgis. We've always been talking about the adventure park and a property to put it on. So that's where some of that tension is. If you weren't here at the beginning, I made a failed motion to not vote on the approval of the things, but just have a discussion. Not so much on the property. I feel pretty comfortable about the property. I think it's a fair price that Mr. Richards has provided to the city. But more on the financials of the adventure park. And I would tell you, myself and the other three members of the infrastructure committee have spent a lot of time down at the Public Works having meetings on this. So much so that Rick sent me a bill for rent. He thinks I've been down there too much. So we have spent a lot of time vetting this, and I got some information I'll show to you that I think, kind of validates what Daniel was talking about. I do think when you look at the construction cost, it comes up to 12.6. You can go to the next page. And if you look at what we think for the revenue, I think conservatively is $12.6 million. And probably the part what we're conservative on is on the TIF. It really comes down to what the final estimation of value is, and I think that Daniel's kind of lowballed it a little bit, but also gives us room, and I appreciate that. Actually, I wanted to lowball it too, because I'd rather, I had a boss tell me sometimes that, yeah, you manage expectations. You don't always, you want to be able to be above the line, not below the line. And so I feel pretty comfortable about this kind of balancing out. Probably need to do a little bit more work when it comes down to the business plan in terms of the construction of the operation and maintenance costs in relation to what we think the anticipated revenue is. We've kind of laid some stuff out there, but I do think there's some more analysis that we can do. I don't think it's a showstopper. One of the things that we probably need to answer as a council is that if we have a year where the revenue doesn't cover the cost, how are we going to cover that cost? We have the means to do it. Looking at how we've managed money over the last 10, 12 years, we do have the means to do it. As I've talked, or people have talked to me, I should say, maybe I should restate this, I've listened as people have discussed this with me and us, and I took this also from talks some of the other counselors who've been out talking to the citizens, particularly as they were doing their petitions, getting to be reelected on this term, is that there's support for the lake, for the adventure park, it's aquatics park, because terminology matters when it comes down to working with some entities. But where some of the challenges are is just people want to understand the financials. How much is it going to cost? What's the impact on me when it comes down to finance? Again, I think we've done quite a bit of work in evaluating this. Now, this is all estimations. If we approve this, we go forward, then we'll have a developer start looking what the final cost is going to be, and it could change. As Angela talked about how much wood has just increased recently. So they could increase, but I do think we have some options here when it comes down to how do we adjust towards those maybe unanticipated costs. When it comes down to the construction of it, one is that I think like I said, we undervalued what our TIF is going to be. There's probably more opportunity there. The other part of it is, sometimes I start talking too long, I forget my train of thought a little bit. But I do really feel good that in terms of having, the other option would be that we can just manage our priorities. One of the things that came out when we did the down back in October down at the community center, when they had those folks were putting the plan together, and we had the community come down. The two things that came out of that was the lake and the splash pad. Those were the two priorities. Everything else was, the mini golf. There was a ton of other stuff there that people wanted to have. But if we had to cut back somewhere, those are probably the areas we would cut back. We'd want to try to focus in on having the aquatics park and having the splash pad. So those would be some key things that we'd want to do. So I do think there's some opportunities here. But again, the only reason I put that motion out there earlier today was not so much because I don't feel comfortable with the numbers. Where I don't feel comfortable is that we've communicated that to you, and not only just communicated that to you, but you haven't really had time to digest it yet. The information that I'll be talking here, that we're just going through right now, just was put onto the agenda here this afternoon. I put it together based on some the feedback on our infrastructure committee. So when it comes down individually, and even as I feel comfortable saying this as a representative of people in Ward 3, my sense is most people do support this. But I do think in terms of transparency and fighting to communicate and working with people and listening, the more time that we can give people to digest this a little bit and ask questions back to the counselors that represent them or anybody, the better off. Because I do think this probably will go to a vote, and I'm okay with it going to a vote. But I think the way we do this and build consensus with our community is going to help us when we get to that vote, that it's going to be a vote that's, for the aquatics park, the splash pad, because we see the value to our community, but we also see that it's not going to hit our bottom line. And I think that's important to talk about because, some of the people I probably need to spend some more time with is when we talk about impacts on people, not everybody, when we talk about people, we just generally pack everybody together in one category. But there are different people out there. I was talking to my neighbor here this weekend, and they've been retired for a long time. And so anytime you raise the water bill, anytime the property values go up and your property taxes go up, and you're sitting on Social Security and not a ton of extra money, at some point, your revenue is not matching the increase in cost that's going on just around us. So those are things that we have to be sensitive of. And again, I feel comfortable. This is not going to have an impact, a tax liability on our community, because I do think it pays for itself. And then the economic growth and just the pride in community, I think there's a lot of stuff that comes from it. So again, you can see the numbers. We're having another meeting this week. We'll probably get more into the operational plan piece of it, looking at the revenue versus the cost, and maybe just kind of deep dive into that just a little bit more. But I would tell you, I feel pretty comfortable from working with the city staff, with the consultants that have come in on where we're sitting. One of the questions that I've had several questions on concerns. One of them is water. Right now, if you look at our capacity versus what our requirements, we're sitting okay. But even without growth, even without putting this lake into reality, at some point here in the near future, our requirement is going to exceed our capacity because our capacity is going down. We have a well that's at 80 years almost, and it's past its life expectancy. We have a couple other wells that are in 35 to 45 years, and their quality is not that great. Even though we have seven wells? I think we have 7 wells, Rick. We don't use them all at the same time. Some of them go deeper, get better water. Some are more shallow. Some of them are kind of close together, and it creates a coning effect. So you can't use them all at the same time. So at some point, we're going to have to invest in additional water capacity. If you've been following, I think is it HB House Bill 1033? Is it? Yep. Hasn't been signed by the governor yet, but there's $200 million out there. $100 million for low interest loans, and $100 million for grants. And 70% of this, in this law, if it's passed, 70% of that goes to communities not Rapid City and not Sioux Falls. The most they can take is 30%. So there's an opportunity for us, as we're even doing this project, to be able to leverage that in, to be able to maybe increase our water capacity, because we're not going to have status quo. Even without the lake, we're going to continue to grow. Look at the additions going out at the Davenport. Look at going out at Avalanche Road here over the next couple of years. We're going to continue to grow, and we want to grow. We need to be able to provide some more supply for houses, in terms of, if you look at the supply and demand, there's just not a lot of houses out there, and it's raising the prices up. So we can't tell people not to move here, but what we can do is provide better supply. And in doing that, we need the water piece of it comes into play. And so the other question is on the quality of the water. Because you have to do runoffs about every year, maybe every 2 years, you have to drain it. You have to do some repair on this. Ultimately, we're using about 8 million gallons a year. That seems like a lot. That's 4 million for the aquatics lake, and that's 4 million for the splash pad. That's roughly about 20 to 30 homes here in the community. It's about it'd be about 2.5% of our total is within that portion. So it's not a huge amount, but again, we are going to be losing some capacity here sometime in the future. And again, we got a plan. We've had some consultants come in, kind of make us appreciate what that problem is, what some of the solutions are, and we're working towards that. And I do think that grant money comes into play. So when it comes down to the lake, we're not voting on the lake tonight. We may be voting on the property, but again, I feel pretty confident that we've kind of vetted this. And what I ask, and it kind of piggies back on what Angela talked to us about earlier, is kind of look at the information. It's out on the packet. If you don't have the information, contact us, and we can have this discussion. Because I do feel that this adventure park really is a good thing for our community. It's something that's been executed from the ground up, where there's been a lot of consensus, not necessarily from the top down. This started off as this little a splash pad down here downtown somewhere, and it's grown to here, and in a good way, because people really recognize the opportunity, not only from a recreational perspective, but also from an economic perspective. So that's all I have.
Thanks, Aaron.
Yep.
Go ahead, Dave.
I would just like to make a few comments. I think the whole process, as far as building our community and building our recreational opportunities, actually, I think most of that's been coming from the people. So we are listening to the people. And it's actually the people of this community that spent a great deal of time talking about what to do from a standpoint, whether it's an aquatics park or whether it ends up being a lake. And I really applaud the people that were on the aquatics committee. This came from the bottom up, from the people, and what the people wanted for our community. And so consequently, this has been something that's been, you might say, simmering actually for a long time.
And I really appreciated also David's comments about recreation during the winter months. So one of the main things I think we're looking at from a standpoint of our people and providing something for our people, we're really trying to provide something that's going to improve quality of life. And I think we have an opportunity here, and we don't know for sure where everything's going. And Aaron's very conscientious about getting all of the facts and figures, and the entire city council and the city staff will continue to do that as time goes on. But I think we have a great opportunity to give something really positive from a standpoint of quality of life to our people in this particular community. And also, I think most of the community members now do realize that, yes, we've got a housing shortage here, and yes, we do have to do something about it. There's no choice in that matter. And so once again, we've got a property here which will help us with that. And I think, once again, it's been mentioned that there's going to be a lot of opportunities for financial gain from the standpoint of sales tax, people being downtown because they're attracted to come in and attend activities here, be it the lake or whatever. Or let's say, I would think we will have the lake, but let's say we don't. At the same time, there's still going to be things being developed at this property that's going to improve our life here in Sturgis. And I think, and that's the way to do it. A lot of people, in fact, I think somebody mentioned it, maybe Angela mentioned it, the fact that if you're going to get things to be better, you do have to grow. And if you don't try to grow all the way around from a standpoint of quality of life and number of people and recreational activities, if you don't try to do that, what happens in most communities, it goes down in the other direction. And we want to be moving forward here in the city of Sturgis. And so I think we're on the right track as far as purchasing this property and developing it.
Thanks, Dave. Anything else from council?
Yeah, I have a couple.
Go ahead.
Well, I think from the beginning of us talking about this last year, I've always thought of it in terms of a legacy project. And we've been really working on a couple different things that fall under that category. As we head into the middle part of this year, we're going to be looking at the comprehensive plan. And this project, I think, is very important to that. It touches on two areas that I think are vital, and that is quality of life, as Councillor Martinson has mentioned, and recreation. Our community, we have a great opportunities. We have great pieces of recreation already surrounding our community, and this aquatics park would just be another wonderful fit into that. I think we all can look around and see the need for residential development because of what has happened over the last couple of years. I fully believe our community we are a jewel in Western South Dakota and the Black Hills because we have quality of life and recreation, and we need to continue to build on that. The commercial development that could be a part of this, I think, is, again, such an important component, and it's needed for our city to see an increase in our sales tax revenue and increase in jobs and really bringing people to our town. To me, the purchase of this land is just the first piece of the puzzle. I fully see the aquatics park going there. I support that. I think the fact that we have water grants from the state that we can use for this project is a very positive thing. And we also have the guardrails for the closing component in the event that it's referred. We have a guardrail for this property. So we will not be, kind of left sitting on it. Finally, my hope and my concern has always been about the penciling out of this project. And I think when you look at the numbers that Daniel put together, that will happen. And we look at other things around town, the community center, the library, and let's look at rally points, even though we don't necessarily continue to sustain that. But people were against Rally Point to begin with. And now look at what a wonderful gathering place it is for us. So just in closing, Mr. Mayor, I want to say that I will be voting to support the purchase of this parcel of land.
Other discussion from council at this point. It is a little bit tricky because the consideration is just of the purchase of the property, but through the discussions and where we've been with this, it's always been inherently connected to a adventure park. So, but the action at hand is just for the purchase, consideration for the purchase. The information is quite inclusive to a bigger vision. Public input on the purchase of this property. Come on up, Bonnie. Don't knock your computer down on the way. Oh. Now there's technical needs.
Okay. All right. I think about the Marquardt property sitting there, and we've got 5 years. Well, maybe we're down to 4 now before we take any action there. So then I think about this piece of property, and while we're not facing at this point any block, my question becomes, how long do you think, can you swag a number on how long it might be before we get something done there so that it becomes revenue generating? And so then my question becomes, what expenses do you anticipate and attached to the ownership of that property until we activate the property? Did that make sense?
It does. To answer your question, we won't own the property if there's any referral or anything like that. That's within the contract for that protection. Once we do own the property, if that happens, the city's intent would be turn it out to RFP, request for proposals from contractors to purchase the property that we're wanting to, portion of the property that we're wanting to sell and develop as a planned urban development. So to answer your question pretty quickly in the scheme of things, if once the property is closed upon, there would be development and action out there rather quickly after we went through some more processes of putting it out for a request for proposals for the actual development of the property outside of the park.
But it'll take a couple of years even to get the park?
The park in particular you're talking? That's a further discussion. I mean, it's a pretty big project, so it doesn't happen, in a month or two or anything like that. But as far as the park itself, that would be, it would be it would probably be a full year after the construction starts before it would be complete.
Okay. And
it would be some time.
What expenses do we have tied to it when it's just sitting there as grass growing ground?
Well, if Dave doesn't give us tickets, none. It would be a situation where the property could sit there until the projects are complete and signed and move forward.
But we don't have like liability insurance or anything like that?
Anything the city owns, we have insurance on, but it's an all-inclusive, very expensive policy. The money that would come for the development of the infrastructure, for the park, for the development, all those areas would be part of the TIF. So there would have to be a plan put together to say, we're going from this pasture to this final project. This is going to be the increased value. This is how much TIF money the city has. And as was shown in Councilor Jordan's summary slides, the fact that the TIF will pay for the construction costs that we see to this point. Okay. So as it's sitting there, really no inherent cost to the city of Sturgis as it moves forward through the process.
Okay. And then I think it was on a blue stripe before this page, but we're looking at housing there again.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, the RFP would include residential, commercial, and park, is what the whole property would be considered as. So yes, housing is certainly a piece of it and part of what our needs are here in Sturgis as we look forward.
Well, and I would hope. I really like what I saw happen with the Aquatics Committee and the cross-section of people who participated in developing that. And I would hope outside of just that recreational piece that this development plan would include community members at the table as well, as opposed to a small group coming back to the community saying this is what we think it should be.
Understood what you're saying for sure. And part of that is direction from us as we put out the RFPs, but as the developers come back, they have their vision to us. So we can say we would rather see this, or we want to see this times 2 or whatever as we go through that process. So your comment of, having more input, that's certainly heard and is going to be considered as the process. But the big chunks, we say this is the parameters, they come back and say this is our vision. And
I guess my question focuses on the development of who is we, who becomes we,
right,
in the process, developers, et cetera. I realize we're not going out there with Rick's shovels and doing the construction, but that input. I mean, as we talked about the Marquardt property, we had a developer there who was actually very good about interfacing with the community and hearing things that were said in the community, taking those back to their table and coming back again with a modified version of what they had started with. So I guess I would hope to see that kind of involvement from the community.
Can I say something? Well, I think as a PUD, a planned urban development, we have that level of input with them. So I would envision it to be, very similar to what we've done in the past. The Marquardt development was a PUD, and there was considerable input as far as we want the park, this way. And because there would have been a playground and a park for the residents up there, there would have been a walking path, a biking path up there. Right. And so for anybody to say that, it wasn't a well thought out plan, that is false.
I thought it was very well thought out.
Yes. And so my intention would be that this piece of property would be done the very same way, where there is a high level of input from residents and council members. And I also just wanted to also make the point that the city is not in the business of development. We are the conduit for this. So anybody, again, out there that wants to say the city is developing this piece of property, that we are acting as the developers, that is false. That's fake news. So let's dispel that right now.
Well, and that's my mission.
Yeah, exactly.
That's my mission when I ask these questions is that it's not enough for you to know it on that side of the table or for this many of us to know it on this side of the table. What's important is that out there,
many as possible,
we know this and that we really feel and see the participation by community members in the definition of we.
Yep. But I can give you an example. One of the things the other kind of big topic we've been talking about in the infrastructure committee is the development down Avalanche Road. And so we've met with the developers. They've had discussions on this at the planning and zoning. We had a couple months, about a month ago, we had a good discussion here at the council in terms of talking about green space, what size the lot should be, what size the street should be. All that information, those developers took all the information, made some adjustments, and are trying to find a middle way that allows them to still be successful economically, but yet address the concerns of the community, the council. And I would think the same process, again, as Becca just pointed out with this place, we put the request for proposal out there, we kind of have a vision what we want. Part of that proposal comes down and, do you fit the vision or not? And then with our ordinances and just continue to communicate with whoever that developer is, through the planning, zoning, through the infrastructure committee, from the council, they can continue to shape something that we can be proud of when it's all said and done.
Well, and Aaron, that I know those things are happening, and I appreciate those things that are happening, but we don't always get this full of room. I wish the room were bigger and we could work on filling it, and I don't have any idea who's listening out there, but with a project this big and this purposeful, it's really important that the community feels that it's intentional, and that it's intentional with regard for the community itself and the individuals within it. And, I'm not big on water. Even as a kid, I didn't like water in my face. But the age I am now, what I like seeing is that I'm seeing in this development attractions for me as well, to make it easier for me to recreate at this age and stage of my life. And I think that's an important version of transparency and visibility, is that the more of these conversations we have, the more of these questions we bring out, the more it filters out there, and Joe Blow on the street really knows what's going on and what the council is doing. And I really appreciate what Angela had to say today. Angela, I know how hard that was for you. I mean, I just have to, I know it doesn't seem like it, but I have to think 3 times before I even open my mouth here still. So I know, but you hit some good things, and I thank you.
Thanks, Bonnie. We have consideration to purchase the Richards property on the agenda. Any further input? Is there a motion?
I would move to approve the purchase of the Richards property.
We have a first by Dave.
I'll second.
We have a second by Becca. Any last chance for input here? Questions, comments, concerns? Again, it's difficult to separate the two, but as been stated, this is a first step in an action plan that is laid out in the packet.
Roll call it.
Any last discussion? I'll go ahead and roll call the vote. I'll start with myself. I am yes. Kevin?
Yes.
Angela?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Becca?
Yes.
Dean?
Yes.
Aaron?
Yes.
Jason?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. Thanks, you guys. Item 13 is other matters before the council. Opportunity to state something not on the agenda in a brief amount of time. I guess I'd like to make the comment that Bob Davis, his family, his friends, and the whole town of Sturgis, thoughts and prayers on the loss of Bob here on yesterday afternoon. So definitely a part of Sturgis and illustrates what Sturgis is, and he certainly will be missed. Council have anything to add? Other matters?
I would like to thank the Boy Scouts for being here this evening.
They better earn something out of it, right, Dave?
I thought they had an award or something they were going to receive.
They're giving a speech.
They don't agree. Anything else from council?
Yes, I do, Mr. Mayor. I just want to say thank you for everyone. For those on Facebook who cannot see, we have, I think, every seat filled here this evening. And I think it goes without saying thank you to the Aquatics Committee. You are the ones that have brought us to this point. You've been carrying the ball. I feel like we're kind of, within the, what is it called? The red zone in football. That we're getting close to the goal line, and we wouldn't have done it without all of you participating and your time and your energy this last year. So just thank you so much.
I'd just like to thank the Richards family too for the unique opportunity that Sturgis is, the path that we're heading down, and I really look forward to it, and I hope everything goes in the right direction. Thank you.
Thank you, David.
Yep, thank you.
I got one comment.
Go ahead, Mike.
I'm not sure I should do this, but I am going to do it anyway. You know me by now. Everybody needs to get out and vote. This can go the other way just that fast. So consider it. Have your neighbors and families and everybody else venture out for the election. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Anything else from council? How about public input? Other matters? We did not get through all of our executive session items, so we appreciate everybody coming out tonight, but we do need a motion for exec.
So moved.
We got a first by Dean.
Second.
We have a second by Aaron. It is 8:24. We'll start at 8:30 p.m. The plan is once we're out of exec, we'll go back into open session on Facebook so that it continues to be live streamed after exec, and then the adjournment.
Let's go shake some hands.